Hey everybody, it is Trags Mike Petralia back with the latest installment of the Jungle Roar podcast, brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks and the Game Time app, and of course, our great folks at CLNS Media. Back with me here on this week's Jungle Roar podcast, the one and only Richard Skinner. We call him Skinny at local12.com. Skinny, who do you have the Bengals taking in your mock at 17, your final mock at 17 in the first round?
It's probably Mykel Williams. I know some of our colleagues are leaning towards Derek Barron, the defensive tackle from Oregon, and I can be talked into that. I just don't know that you go, Mike, you spent money at that position in free agency. You re-signed your own guy in B.J. Hill. You spent a second-round pick and a third-round pick last year, and you're going to go back to that well in the first round this year? I just don't see it. So if he's there, for me, it's Mykel Williams from Georgia.
To me, it's the best player on the board. And
sure.
We asked Duke Tobin this on Monday when he had his pre-draft news conference at Paycor Stadium. And I asked him whether or not the talent outweighs the priority to fill a need, whether it's depth, whether it's a starter in the first round. And he's like, look, we're going to take the best player that makes the most sense for us. And that's obviously NFL personnel speak. I get that. But to me, what you're trying to do, you're trying to pick the best overall player who can come in and make an immediate impact, probably on the defensive side of the ball, but make an immediate impact wherever it is on your roster. To me, I like Jihaad Campbell, and here's why.
I was going to go there because he's my wild card. I just don't think he's going to be there. I think he's a great pick.
Right. And obviously there's some concerns about his shoulder. And he had a shoulder injury, a labrum injury, supposedly later in the season. But if he is on the board at 17, he fits so many needs on the Bengals defense. You can move him all around. There have been a lot of comparisons to Micah Parsons with the Dallas Cowboys. I would love a Micah Parsons on the Cincinnati Bengals if they could get that caliber of player, if indeed he were healthy.
Well, I'll show you. Let me close. This is my first. Which way am I going with it? There he is. He's right there. Jihaad Campbell. He's one of my first-round guys, too. Yeah, I mean, he fits the role of athletic linebacker. They need to get younger and more athletic. Jermaine Pratt is still on the roster. Duke didn't exactly give him a glowing recommendation today when he was asked about Jermaine, so it feels like they're ready to move on from him. I think it's just an insurance policy that he's still here. He fits that athletic linebacker. To your point, if you read Dane Brugler's guide from the Athletic, his draft guide, The Beast, there are a lot of scouts that project him to, on passing downs, be able to flip outside as an edge rusher. So he fills your linebacker need on first and second down, right? And then maybe he fills that specialized pass rusher on third down. So, he checks a whole lot of boxes, no doubt about it. To your point, I think the main concern is the injury concern. But I don't think it would be overwhelmingly that would cause you not to take the guy.
So I was a little bit surprised, maybe I shouldn't have been, that there were as many questions about an offensive guard being taken possibly in the first round. And I understand there certainly are a high level of, or a number of high-level offensive tackles available. If the Bengals see an offensive tackle they think they can move inside, do you think there's a chance Duke Tobin does that?
Yeah, Kelvin Banks from Texas is certainly a possibility.
Right.
I know people don't want to hear this, and I don't think this was lip service from them. I do think they like the guards on their roster. We may not. We may question them, but they
Correct.
I think Zach Taylor made the answer today of talking about Cody Ford of, how last year he had to play all over the place. He started a game at right tackle. He started a couple games at left tackle, started a couple games or a game or two at right guard, some games at left guard. He was all over the place and really didn't get a chance to settle in. I think they like to see him compete for a starting spot. I think they like to see Lucas Patrick, who they signed from the Saints, compete for a starting spot. I think they believe they still can get more out of Cordell Volson with a new offensive line coach, and they like Jackson Kirkland. There's four guys right there. So I don't know if the need is desperate, but I do think that to the point of that first-round pick and the best available, I think is the best available because they've got a bunch of different areas they can go, be it edge, be it guard, be it safety, be it defensive tackle, be it linebacker like a Jihaad Campbell. I mean, there's just a lot of different boxes you can check where you don't have to go outside of a box and go, well, we really do need this spot. And, it's a player who's 8 pegs down. They did that with Billy Price the one year they needed a center, and it backfired on them badly. Frank Ragnow got taken 1 pick ahead. Frank Ragnow would have been picked by the Bengals. Instead, he was gone. The Bengals were desperate for a center, and they went and got Billy Price. And I think we talked about this on the last time I was on the pod. At the owners' meetings, Zach Taylor even talked about if they don't find somebody that they like in the draft at the guard spot, there's going to be another wave of free agency, and there's a handful of guards that maybe they can go revisit that. But again, fans, you may not like to hear this, but I do believe, I don't think it's lip service, I do believe they like the 4 guards that comprise that
I do
main
too.
portion of the guard room. So,
and look, I know a lot of fans, even if they're very loyal fans and close following fans of the Bengals, they don't know a lot about Jackson Kirkland. The Bengals do.
Yeah.
And there's a reason he is still on the roster. There was a lot of talk about him a couple of training camps ago, and really opened the eyes even of Zach Taylor at that time. So, look, I think Jackson Kirkland and Cordell Volson battle it out at left guard, Cody Ford and Lucas Patrick battle it out at right guard, and you're going to get an offensive guard, at least one, drafted in this particular draft. And you have some of the flexibility with a guy like Matt Lee. I think they feel like they have a plenty of numbers here to work out some type of strategy along the interior of the offensive line. Now, the Bengals opened Skinny their locker room because today, Monday, was the April 21st, was the first day of off-season workouts. Day 1 of phase 1, as Zach Taylor put it on Monday afternoon, and speaking with us at Paycor Stadium. And you were in there to talk to a couple of the defensive players. There's Cam Taylor-Britt spoke, but 2 in particular on the defensive side. I think we're all fascinated to see how they handle this season. And they're edge rushers. Myles Murphy, the number 1 pick in 2023, and Joseph Osai, a draft pick way back in 2021. What were their collective messages, and individually, what did they have to say?
Yeah, Myles talked about reshaping his body, that he's gone from like 18% body fat to 13%. He's taking his diet more seriously. He says he feels more explosive, better. He's looking forward to working with his new defensive line coach, Jerry Montgomery. And I think the other part, too, and I asked him this, I said, you didn't get much opportunity the last couple of years. They're talking about giving you opportunity. How much of that was on you, and maybe how much of that was on them, not giving you that opportunity because other players? He said, no, I'm not going to make excuses. I'll say it was on me, and I need to do things better. So, there is a lot of hope that he's going to play up to first-round draft choice status.
Hope is not a plan.
It's not a plan. I'm with you on that. But I think the backup plan to that is Joseph Osai. Again, we're going to still, for assumption's sake, assume Trey Hendrickson plays on this team in some way, shape, or form, whether it's the final year of his contract, whether they get the extension done. I'll be shocked if they trade him this weekend. I really will. I mean, they may get it
at this
off
point, I agree.
Right. But yeah, so I think, so your backup plan is Joseph Osai. And listen, Joseph, over the last 7 games last year, in 6 of those last 7 games, he recorded at least a half a sack. That's pretty consistent. That's doing something every game down the stretch. Before that, in his first 40 career games, he only had 4 sacks. He had 5 down the stretch last season. Some of that was finally getting healthy. For him, it was getting more opportunity. And so, I again, to your point, yeah, hope is not a plan, but I think the plan is we're going to give Myles as much rope as we can give him, and we still got Joseph in the mix as a rotational piece. And again, whether it's a first round or not, there's so many edge rushers. I mean, you can grade them all the way down through the 3rd round, Mike, of guys who can come in and at least be rotational pieces at end. They're getting an edge rusher before the end of day 2, in my opinion, to add to the mix.
I would definitely agree with that. My issue with Myles Murphy is, does he have the dog in him?
No, it's a great question.
Yeah, and to me, if he does, if somehow Al Golden and Jerry Montgomery can light a fire under his tail and really get him to not depend on 1 or 2 moves, if they can get him to a 3rd and a 4th move to show some of these offensive tackles in the NFL that he's a threat on the edge, then we're talking. But short of that, he's going to beat a mediocre offensive tackle or even, maybe on a stunt, beat an inside guard every so once in a while. The Bengals need more pressure than that.
No doubt. Maybe he is the cautionary tale of Shamar Stewart in this draft. You got all the traits in the world, all the athleticism in the world, but the production was okay at Clemson, but it didn't wow you at Clemson. Shamar Stewart's production at Texas A&M is downright atrocious. But he's got all the traits and all the athleticism. So maybe it's a cautionary tale for what they do in the first round if Shamar Stewart's on the board. But I do think you give some rope to Myles Murphy. It's probably not a lot of rope. I mean, and you hopefully then put, again, Joseph Ossai in that rotational mix and whatever rookie there is in that rotational mix.
All right, he is Richard Skinny, we like to call him, down at Paycor Stadium. He covers the Cincinnati Bengals, does a great job covering the Bengals for local12.com. Want to tell you about Prize Picks. It's the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash, he said. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Cash in on the basketball playoffs, which are now underway, of course, with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup. Whether it's points, rebounds, assists, take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series. Starting with the play-in round, every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you in the Takes Two Tickets sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1, a VIP trip to the championship. Prize Picks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. Every Tuesday, by the way, Prize Picks will discount several projections on the board, usually by 15% to 25%. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the ice in your Prize Picks lineup for the hockey playoffs. Whether it's goals, points, or hits, take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Back with Richard Skinner of local12.com. Skinny, about Joseph Ossai. It was unusual, I think, to see Joseph Ossai come back for a couple of reasons. First of all, you don't necessarily see a rookie or a player playing on his rookie deal come back and just sign for 1 year. He did. And on top of that, his agent is David Mulugeta of Athletes First. The Bengals, lo and behold, finally got a deal done with David Mulugeta, and a minor deal. But look, Joseph Ossai could make himself a lot of money if the Bengals defense plays well, and he has a big role in it in 2025.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Zach or Duke. I think it was Duke who even said that, there were other teams that were very interested in Joseph Ossai and B.J. Hill, and they were still able to get them back. So there obviously was a little bit of a bidding war for those guys. And listen, if you're Joseph, it's a new system. I get that part, but it's the I guess the devil you know versus the devil you don't, right? That you've been with this organization, you started to play well. To your point, it's a good team, and maybe he's got a chance to put it over the top. Again, I can't discount what he did down the stretch, Mike. I mean, he really was very, very productive down the stretch of last season when he got some opportunity. And, we've talked to Zach Taylor, Lou Anarumo before, and they pointed to the injury issue. I mean, he's had a bad wrist issue, and apparently that wrist has gotten better, and it's allowed him to be able to use really both hands in the pass rush as opposed to playing one hand. I mean, again, imagine going out there and playing one-handed. Now, he's technically playing two-handed. You know what I mean? He just didn't have great usage of the other one because of the wrist. And down the stretch, he started to feel better with it and probably more confident in it. So maybe you get the guy that the flashes we saw in preseason as a rookie, the flashes we saw where he made some plays in his second year, where he made a huge sack of Patrick Mahomes in a home win over Kansas City here. So maybe that's the guy you're finally getting. You got at the end of year 4, and you're going to get into year 5. Don't forget when Trey Hendrickson finally exploded, right? I mean, it took him a few years to get going as a pass rusher in this game. I'm not here to put him in that category. But Trey wasn't an instant hit as a pass rusher in this league either.
No, he wasn't. And the Bengals are not exactly in a position where they can't give a guy the chance to prove himself. The Bengals need for him to go out and prove himself simply because of the numbers game and what they've lost in terms of retirement, injuries, the attrition, the uncertainty with Trey Hendrickson. I think, I think he's going to be back under what terms, I don't know yet. I have thought all along they will eventually get some type of minor contract extension done, 1 or 2 years, and that's it. And if there's nothing else out there for Trey Hendrickson, at least immediately, I think he's more than likely going to take this deal and say, well, if I'm good enough to get 3 or 4 years, let me take the 2 years now, prove to other teams I still have it. But, based on what Duke Tobin said on Monday, it sounded like they still have a great deal of paying all the lip service to Trey Hendrickson, but it sounds like they have all the respect in the world for Trey. It was interesting, and this question was brought up to Zach on Monday, that the team Trey has a bigger issue with the team than he does Zach Taylor and the coaching staff. What did you make of that?
I think it's true. I think that's one of the things. I mean, listen, Zach keeps getting that A score on the report card from the NFLPA, and I don't think that's by accident. I think he is, and this is going to sound awful because nobody likes to hear he's a player's coach, but he very much is. And I think part of that for him is keeping an open dialogue with players, understanding there's a business side. Like, it's out of my control. It's out of Zach's control. And I think Trey understands it's out of Zach's control. So I think there's a mutual respect there of there's nothing I can do about it. All I'm asking you to do is do the things you're supposed to do. I don't think he's going to be here for any of the voluntary stuff. I wouldn't expect him to. I know he's going to keep himself in good shape. I'll be disappointed if he doesn't come to the mandatory stuff. I'm going to guess that's probably the deal that Zach's trying to strike with him right now. I mean, look, Jamar came to the mini camp last year, and while he didn't do anything other than do some of the installs, he was here. I would expect Trey to be here. Do I expect him to do any drill work? Probably not. And again, I think that's probably exactly, listen, just be here, be around your teammates. I'm not going to ask you to take part in any of this stuff. And then we'll see where training camp comes along, and hopefully you get the deal done.
And be there for the communication that takes place in a lot of these OTAs. And that's where Zach Taylor will tell you Jamar Chase was of great value last year in trying to talk to some of the younger receivers, Jermaine Burton aside. He did talk to Jermaine, and he worked with him. And I think some of the production that Jermaine Burton had early in his rookie year last year was because he had a degree of comfort, because Jamar Chase took him under his wing a little bit. I'm sure the Bengals wished that maybe would have extended to his off-the-field behavior. But that being the case, there is value to these veterans who don't have to show up at all of these off-season events leading up to mandatory minicamp. There is value in them being around.
Yeah, I don't think Trey will be here for any of that stuff. I don't, but I do think he'll be here for mandatory minicamp.
Right. That's what I mean. That's what I meant.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, it was interesting to see Jermaine Burton sitting at his locker today, on time and in the right place. I don't think that's like a huge step forward, but it's a baby step forward at least. And, if I'm him, I'm going to just tail along T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and go, what does it take to be a pro wide receiver? Go follow those two guys for a season. You'll find out.
I could make a joke here about what did he say about baby steps last year?
Oh,
what did Jermaine Burton say?
Yeah,
he did.
It was about getting up. I think getting out of bed was a baby step, right?
Baby step. Yes, it was. And he couldn't even take those little baby steps, as it turned out later in the season. But we'll leave that for another podcast. My name is Mike Petraglia, Trags, talking with Richard Skinny of Local12.com, covering your Cincinnati Bengals. Want to tell you about the best place to buy tickets online, Game Time. Game Time makes getting tickets faster and easier, even for hard-to-get playoff seats. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA playoff tickets. There's the last-minute deals. They can save you up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. Download the Game Time app and create an account today. Use that code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back with Richard Skinner of Local12.com, covering your Cincinnati Bengals. Skinny, what did you make of, and I asked Duke Tobin about this, the impression on the outside, the narrative, if you will, I love that word, the narrative that the Bengals care more about offense than defense. And he said, I'm all about wanting to build the best team I can because I believe we are a championship team. Absolutely. What did you make of that on Monday?
Yeah, I mean, they obviously, the resources allocated for Burrow, Chase, and Higgins are pretty significant. Orlando Brown, pretty significant. They spent first-round draft capital on Amarius Mims. So, yeah, I mean, they've spent a lot of capital financially and draft-wise on that side of the ball. But I would also say this, they've spent a lot of draft capital on defense. I mean, they spent a first-round pick on Dax Hill, a second-round pick on Cam Taylor-Britt, a second-round pick on DJ Turner, a first-round pick on Miles Murphy. They maybe have not allocated the financial resources, although they did pay Trey Hendrickson not once but twice, and they might pay him here a third time. They paid B.J. Hill a pretty good chunk to come back and play for this team. And no, it doesn't compare to the offense. So I think that narrative is a fair narrative just because of who you have to pay and who you are paying, which is the three main offensive stars. When you do that, though, Mike, one side of the ball, that's probably where you need to hit better in the draft, and that's what they've not done a great job of, is they've not hit on a lot of this draft capital they spent on defense either.
And it's not all about the first round. I know a lot of hype gets spent on the first round, and I totally understand that. But they have got to make sure their second, third, and fourth round picks are either, if not starters, high-level contributors to the defense. And I don't know how they define analytically inside the organization what productive is. Is it the number of snaps? Is it the number of tackles made? Is it the number of turnovers created? How do you think they go about it, Skinny? And you've been around the team long time.
I think snaps. I mean, that's Miles Murphy didn't get a lot of snaps because he didn't show, I guess, the coaching staff in practice and in the reps he got that he was worthy of putting on the field to go make plays. So I do think for rotational pieces, it is snaps. This team has not done a great job in those rounds. I mean, the jury's still out on DJ Turner, Cam Taylor-Britt, Dax Hill, and Dax was a first-round pick. And maybe you did hit on Josh Newton as a fifth-round pick. I'm kind of with you. I'm kind of through the fourth round, and those guys need to be contributors or starters at some point, or that was not a very good pick. Fifth round and beyond, okay, that's where you're rolling the dice a little bit, and if you hit on one of those, great. I mean, they've hit on Chase Brown. Maybe they've hit on Josh Newton, but yeah, I'm with you. You need to start hitting on those level. I mean, Joseph Ossai was a third-round pick, and to the point we said, I mean, his first 40 career games he played, he had 4 sacks. The last 7 he played last year, he had 5 sacks. Maybe he started to come on. But yeah, to that point, they'd not hit on that pick either.
What do you think they do with Jermaine Pratt?
I think he's just the insurance piece that if a linebacker doesn't fall to him in this draft, they look to that next wave of free agency, point to a guy and say, okay, we'll sign him for the money we're going to save by cutting Jermaine. And in a worst case scenario, if that guy isn't out there after the draft and they don't get their guy in the draft, Jermaine's Oren Burks and Jermaine are rotational guys. They rotate with each other.
What do you know about Oren Burks? Now, it was interesting that, and I understand why he did this, but Duke Tobin said on Monday that this is a guy that started for the Philadelphia Eagles on their defense at the start of their Super Bowl runs, a run towards a Super Bowl victory. Obviously, I think he senses what a lot of people on the outside feel, that, this was just a special teams player. This was a Band-Aid. This isn't a significant free agency signing. And again, we're not inside the room and inside the building, as they say. They, I think, may view Oren Burks a lot differently than we do on the outside.
Probably. The only thing I would say is he's been in the league since 2018 and has 17 career regular season starts under his belt. Now, the other side, to Duke's point, he did start 3 of their 4 playoff games in that Super Bowl run, performed at a pretty high level. Probably doesn't have a lot of tread on the tire for a guy that's been in the league that long. So maybe you feel like, hey, he's been in the league for a while and maybe finally just started to find his stride. I do think in the perfect scenario, there is a linebacker taken before the, end of day 2, maybe first pick on day 3, which would be the 4th round, that could compete with an Oren Burks for a starting spot and may the best man win. If not, you've got to find depth piece no matter who it is. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think they do view him a little differently than what it felt like to me this was a Oren Burks for Akeem Davis-Gaither trade when they let Akeem go as a free agent. That,
right.
Okay, good solid
I think a lot of people
linebacker to have.
Right.
Special teams guy, probably good vet, all those things. But, again, maybe that Super Bowl run did something. I will say this. Nick Scott started in a Super Bowl, and then really didn't do a whole lot for the Bengals. So I'm not sure I'm gonna take a Super Bowl run for it again when he's been in this league. He's played 108
That's a
games
great
in this league.
analogy.
Yeah, he's played 108 games in this league in the regular season and made 17 starts. I mean, that kind of speaks that teams have not seen him as a starting caliber player. But hey, maybe again that Super Bowl run is all it took to get him going.
Okay, I'm going to throw this out there, and this is the wildest of scenarios because I'm sure it won't happen. Ashton Genty falls to 17. Bengals take him?
Not a chance.
Even if he were there, no way.
I think the only wild card weird one for me, and it's not going to happen either, would be if Tyler Warren fell to that spot, the tight end from Penn State. I think you have to think long and hard, but I just think there's too many. But listen, your running back room is full at the moment. I do think they will draft a running back at some point, which will be running back 3, and they'll cut Zach Moss, but they haven't moved on from Zach Moss yet. They signed Samaje Perine. They love Chase Brown. The thing for me, if you're taking Ashton Genty that high, what are you doing with Chase Brown then? I mean, you're not going to take a running back in the first. I mean, they're not going to do that by any stretch of the imagination. I know a couple of people have mocked him there and some stuff, and I'm like, what are we doing? We're not. No, they're not.
Well, that's the craziness of this time of the year.
It is. I'll give you that part of it, but that's no. If he's on the board, no. And he's not.
Let me give you another one.
Okay.
Colston Loveland.
No.
Tight end.
Yeah, that's where the Tyler Warren would be the only one that would entice me a little bit. But listen, you re-signed a tight end room that had pretty good success last year. Gesicki's back. Drew Sample has his role. Tanner Hudson has his role. Cam Grandy got some.
But if you can
year.
upgrade, you can upgrade, Skinny. You know as well as I do.
But are you upgrading by not upgrading at the positions you need to upgrade? You've got solid performers there.
Well, I mean, some would argue that maybe by the time it gets to you, all the defensive edges that fit within your system, and Zach Taylor did mention that there is a fine line between taking the best available player versus with skills out the yin yang versus a player where you have to fit them into what you do, or you have to fit them into what you do, or vice versa. You have to kind of fit your system around them. Either way, maybe that defensive edge that they're looking for is not, they don't have rated in the first round.
Well, but
right?
then maybe the guard is, and maybe the safety. And there's so many tackles as well. There is no way on God's green earth they're taking a tight end or a running back in the first round in this draft. I don't think they take a tight end at all.
No, I don't think they take. I'm going off the reservation.
I know. Listen. I've seen some people have done this in mocks where I've gone, wait, what are we doing? Are we paying attention?
It's crazy time of year. It's crazy time. Yeah.
I like the fun. I like the fun and games of it, but I like the logic of it too. That has no logic to it, in my opinion. When again, there's so many other. This is so deep of a class on defensive line. You could argue, well, they're wait to take one. No, I think you're gonna get the pick of the litter whenever you want to get the pick of the litter. Yeah,
and I think you should do that. Don't get cute. Stick with your board.
Yep.
Stick with your board. Okay. Speaking of which, what does Skinny have coming up besides the mock draft, his final mock draft on when is it, Wednesday or Thursday?
Thursday. I'm gonna do put up Thursday morning. Probably do it Wednesday night. I've been doing a daily positional analysis, even at quarterback, of the draft itself, the Bengals needs there. What round might they take a guy? Again, a quarterback, not gonna probably take a guy. You got 3 on the roster, so that's not gonna happen. But again, it at least gives you some names to look at. And then if you know, like, for a couple position groups, I've said they probably won't take that position group till 4th round or later. Then I'll look at some of the guys 4th round or later and put them in. So I've done all the way through. Let's see. Today was linebacker. I've still got secondary and specialists to go. So I started that last Monday. There's links to the most recent story for the previous story. So that's all at the website at local12.com.
With the 17th pick in the 2025 NFL draft,
Sanders.
you blew it. You robbed it. You robbed my joy.
I know you. You were going. I knew where you were going with that. You're a smart aleck.
That's exactly where I was going with that, to keep them away from the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it would be brilliant, but I don't think the Bengals are in a position defensively where they can afford.
Unless, now here's the only thing I will say about that, and I wish I didn't think about this, because in my mind is thinking you're not going to do this. What if the Minnesota Vikings come calling for Jake Browning and offer you a couple of picks in this year's draft? then maybe you'd be in the quarterback market at some point in this draft.
So you're not buying Logan Woodside after they signed him last week?
I'm buying Logan Woodside as a fine camp arm who will do well in preseason game number 3.
And a scout quarterback.
Yes.
With a strong arm. I love having you on, Skinny. You're the best. You're a great friend, and you do awesome work, obviously, on local12.com.
Always enjoy hiking.
Yep. Be sure to follow him online for all of your 2025 NFL draft coverage. When you're not following yours truly, Trags at CINCINNATI with a Y.com, and this very podcast, the Jungle Roar podcast, up on my YouTube page for all of the news and reaction to what the Bengals do on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. The draft, of course, physically is in Green Bay, but we'll have you covered from Paycor Stadium. He is Richard Skinner, Skinny for local12.com. My name is Mike Petralia, Trags. This Jungle Roar podcast brought to you by our great friends at Prize Picks and the Game Time app and CLNS Media. Until next time, keep that jungle roaring.